This morning, I'm reminded of a case of a young man in Kenya who, not too long ago, went really viral for having practiced law and won several cases. And it turns out that the young man did not have a law license or did not have the authority to practice law. And these cases are not unique to Kenya, nor are they strange for those of us who've lived in Kenya for a while. And in fact, many diasporans and Kenyans living at home have lots of nightmare stories about lawyers or attorneys who do all kinds of things to really mess up people's lives. Some lawyers can really mess you up big time. And we have these examples not just in Kenya, but even in the US where we spent some time. So I'd be curious to know what your experience has been like with different attorneys, just to get a sense as to whether this is something that is widespread or it's just within the circles that I find myself. Now, for this and more, I want you to join me for the next 10 minutes so we can discuss. And if there's something that I miss, feel free to share in the comment section. And I hope this will be an eye-opening discussion for everybody. Now, anyway, good morning, friends. Good morning, family. Welcome back to Karating. Those who are joining us for the first time, we are in Western Kenya. And we are right here, deep in the village, just doing basic routine cleaning with family here and there and hanging out. And then later on, we'll take the kids and head out to the shores of Namlolwe. We love living in the village, but we also spend time in California, so we go back and forth. Overall, I have to repeat again that I am really grateful for the many folks who invite us to their homes and allow us to film, learn, and inspire the rest. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for folks who share their stories that we end up sharing again in our videos. I really appreciate what you're doing for us. Currently, basically, we are a one-stop shop where people who are looking for support with construction project, real estate, whether it's land, or those who are just looking for consultation, somebody gives you a quote and you're not too sure whether it makes sense or not, we offer support. We have a team of architects, builders, designers, landscapers, and more. And so my job basically is to evaluate your project, match you with the right expert, and supervise. So if you need any help, again, my number is posted on the channel. So back to today's topic. We will start first with a few disclaimers. That number one, just like every other country on earth, Kenya has incredible attorneys. And by the same token, we also have really terrible folks who present as attorneys and cause massive problems. Now, the good ones are really good, and I've seen some incredible work done by some of these top attorneys. However, the terrible ones are known to cause a lot of harm. So in this video, I want to talk about four things. Now, first, I'll start by discussing issues that generally diasporans use attorneys for. There are many things. You don't have to use attorneys for every single thing. But I'll share with you some of the issues that are good if you involve attorney. Then number two, I'll talk about how we find these attorneys. Number three, I'll talk about some of the common problems that I hear folks run into, some of them that I've personally experienced working with different lawyers here and there. And then lastly, as I do with all my videos, I'll share some lessons that I've picked up over the years that I hope would be useful for those of you who are thinking about engaging attorneys or those who are currently working with different attorneys. So let's start by talking about some of the issues that typically diasporans need lawyers for. And I say, having an attorney is not the only option you have in Kenya. There are many things that in diaspora we have to resolve using attorneys, but those very same things can be handled without attorneys. For example, in Kenya, you have the option of simply going and talking to law enforcement folks directly. There are things they can resolve without necessarily hiring a lawyer. And then you could use chiefs, local chiefs and government officials to address minor stuff in the village. And in many cases too, you can involve elders, especially things that just require arbitration within the village. Village elders can really help with many things, but also just keeping in mind that you have the option of still hiring a lawyer. But if you can use this other option without spending much on attorneys, For some things, it is okay to do that. Another option too, you can use your political connections to get things done. Unfortunately, this system is highly, highly corrupt. So again, as I mentioned earlier, there are certain things that we highly recommend that if at all possible, please hire an attorney if you're going to handle the following things. So the first one obviously is land. In Kenya, you can buy land 100% without using an attorney. But it's one of those things that I know things can go so wrong so quickly that we always recommend get an attorney. Currently, I have a client who was actually selling land. And all they did was to involve a chief, and then they signed stuff. And apparently, this client was not covered. And so the person who was purchasing the land only paid a small bit of the money, is using the land, is not completing payments, and they didn't have any agreements to handle that. So when you're handling land issues, please engage attorneys. They can help with drafting agreements. And in some cases, they can do the whole process from processing paperwork, doing due diligence and all that. Now, it can be expensive when you have the attorneys doing all of that. My preference is I get the attorneys to do the paperwork, and then the rest of the work, including due diligence, whatnot, all that stuff, I just use a surveyor. Now, there are certain dispute resolution experiences that I may recommend that you use an attorney, especially when a lot of money is involved. And I will not quantify what that is. A lot of money will depend on each individual. So if there's a significant amount of money involved and there's some dispute, be sure to involve an attorney. If there are contracts, again, that involve a lot of money, be sure to involve an attorney. Or if there are places where there's potential for harm to occur, serious harm, you want to do that. And then, of course, when you have a contract that may have significant instrumental liability on you, be sure to involve an attorney. And generally, of course, criminal matters, you need an attorney. And maybe in some cases, I would say complex immigration issues may also require an attorney. If you're dealing with anything inheritance, to the extent possible, make sure you involve an attorney who knows what they're doing. So in general, if you're to ask, how do we find attorneys in Kenya? For the most part, we go by referrals, because apparently Kenyan attorneys are barred from advertising their services. I don't know what's up with that, but I suspect it's one of these relics from old British laws that defines quote-unquote what a profession is, that a professional should not be advertising their services. I find that very archaic, but I'm told that technically they're not supposed to advertise their services. So most of the attorneys we work with, we get through referrals. So here's the list of the common problems you likely will experience. The first common problem you find across the board is insane and opaque billing. Oftentimes, when you talk to attorneys, they will verbally give you a figure that they're going to charge you. And then next thing you know, your bills are going to evolve to the point where something can move from 5,000 shillings and then you end up paying sometimes over 100,000. And they do that on purpose so they can keep milking you and billing you. So sometimes you never even know how much you're supposed to pay for whatever service. So they hook you up with a small amount and then the amount keeps evolving. Very common. And then, unfortunately, many attorneys that I've encountered do not have clients' interest in their heart. So oftentimes they see diasporans simply as ATMs. So I've seen cases where attorneys collude with other attorneys and judicial officials to really screw you. And this actually happened to my dad not too long ago, where our attorney apparently colluded with our opponent's attorney and the judge that was handling the case, to the point where they simply made their own agreement. We later found out much later, and they really screwed my dad. So that happens quite a bit. So this is one of the reasons I say don't ever fully trust these folks. And then sometimes they don't even have the time to meet up with you, review your case, and support you as best as they can. In fact, like in my dad's case, on the day they were going to read the final judgment, our attorney didn't even show up to the court. Or sometimes they send very, very new, inexperienced folks who can't help much. And unfortunately, again, some attorneys end up colluding with criminals because many of them tend to know a whole lot about you. Just like your doctors, your attorneys sometimes probably know more than they should. And so I've seen cases where attorneys actually collude with criminals to cause people harm. Now, then there are people who masquerade as lawyers when they're not, and they'll get you to trouble real quick. There are people who went to school, did law, but don't have licenses. So in Kenya, I think they're considered, they're not advocates. So they can't even go with you to a court and things like that. So you got to know the difference. Some of them have actually lost their license and have been struck off the register. So in some cases, I've actually met attorneys who know less than I do on some matters. And I find that really interesting. So when you find that your attorney knows a whole lot less than you do, you have a problem. That is when you need to switch stuff. So just because somebody has a law license, somebody's an advocate in Kenya, doesn't mean they are competent enough to do what they're supposed to. And again, this might be a function of some of the national exams that allow people who can squeeze their way in to get into the law profession. There are plenty of attorneys who you talk to somebody and you can clearly tell that a person who has a law license does not really know what they're talking about. So here's some of the lessons I've learned over the years. Number one, first of all, get the attorney's, whatever registration number, get their name, and check whether they're licensed on the LSK website. This is free. Just Google it, type their name. If they're registered, you'll see their status. So if they're not active, then you have a problem. Number two, always keep a lawyer on speed dial. You don't want to find a lawyer when you're in crisis. So it's often good to have somebody on standby, somebody who's been verified and vetted. And then, of course, no matter who you're working with, never give complete blind trust. You got to do your homework. Because if you're just sitting there waiting for your attorney to do the work, if you end up in one of these unscrupulous guys, then you'll be messed up. And then just be sure that whatever contracts you sign with your attorney, your interests and obligations are clearly spelled out. And also make sure that on the lawyer's part, you're also clear on what they're expecting from you, especially in terms of cost. Otherwise, you'll end up paying way, way more than you anticipated. I've seen many of these cases, particularly when we're processing land for our clients. And this is the reason I rarely venture out to work with new attorneys. I work with folks who have helped me in the past, continue to help. And so I don't like exploring new attorneys just because of that. So I want somebody who's very clear as to what I owe them, what they're going to offer in terms of service, and the schedule of payment and things like that. So whatever you do, just make sure your interests and obligations are clearly spelled in writing. Now, with that said, again, find lawyers who are also connected within the system, because sometimes in Kenya, the most important thing is connection. So make sure your lawyer is connected. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next. Thank you.